Right, so today it's a corporate filming job. I'm in Brighton, just meters from the famous seafront. I'm working with a company I've done quite a bit of corporate filming with in the past, so I know most of the people, which is always going to make it much more relaxing, much more enjoyable day. Old-fashioned kind of Victorian era hotel, a bit like Fawlty Towers, I guess. But I've been given a small function room to set up for a succession of pieces to camera. So they're breaking away from a kind of a separate sort of conference type situation, coming in and doing their piece. And let's have a look at the room and how we're going to go about filming it. Quite rectangular. Got carpet on the floor, but it is a bit echoey. What it's got going for it, it's got a bit of depth along the diagonal of the room. So that's always good. The room's also got two windows, quite large, but they've got blinds on them, thankfully. Good old-fashioned manual pull-down blinds and quite thick material. It's doing a good job of blocking out most of the light. It's quite an overcast but bright day outside. So I've had to black out the windows to keep control of the environment, and I've gone for a lighting setup. Let's go through that. So keying with my reefer, I think it's the smallest one they do, but I haven't used it that much in the last couple of years. The beauty about reefer lights is that they come with this softbox built in as part of the system. So they just offer a very quick way to get a lovely soft light. So I'm keying with the reefer on the C-stand. The C-stand is something I'm just going to make more use of. I had it for many, many years, but because it's such a kind of an awkward thing to transport, unless you're driving, I've not really used it. And so many shoots, certainly pre-COVID, were kind of much smaller footprint in terms of kit, much more agile, much more kind of scrambling around, getting a lot of things done. It's just not been practical. But now with a lot of the shoots that I'm driving to, I want to make more use of the C-stand. It's such a great kind of piece of equipment to use because it can take a payload, of quite a heavy payload. I've got some sandbags on it to kind of give it extra stability. It's just a beautiful soft light you can get going in seconds. So I've got it high above. Now below, I'm using one of the LED light panels I've got just to throw a little bit of uplift light onto the underneath the contributor's head. Now, usually with uplighting, you've got to be very careful because the classic is that if it's a very strong uplight, then you're going to get that sort of horror look. You know, the vampire, you're lighting from underneath, doesn't normally flatter. But here, we're getting nearly all the illumination's been done by the reefer. This is just lifting out some of the shadow a little bit. And of course, because the LEDs are on a dimmer themselves, it can just, you know, pinpoint that and just make it a nice soft light that's just going to take a little bit of the edge of the modeling from those shadows underneath the subject's face. So for the backlight, a hair light, I'm going with my dado. Again, the beauty of dados is the control with the barn doors and the dimmer. You've got a real amount of control where you want to pinpoint that light. So it's just going onto the back of the contributor's head. Got that in the back of frame, obviously running on the mains. So the room itself is fairly boring, right? There's a couple of paintings on the wall, but I don't want to shoot towards them because they are reflective, and also that's going to compromise the length I can get, the diagonal. So I'm shooting towards plain walls. I say plain, actually the far wall, the shorter far wall, has got a kind of striped wallpaper pattern, and then the longer wall that joins with is a plain colour. So there is a bit of a difference. Now, to kind of highlight that difference and just to add some interest to the background, I've thrown up one of the LED panels against one of the walls, just giving a slight pool of light. So it's just adding a bit of interest to what is otherwise a bit of a murky, boring sort of background. And what I've also done is I've made sure that the dividing line between that corner, that corner where the plain wall and the wallpaper wall meet, creates a line of difference. I've made sure that is not going to be behind directly behind the contributor. I don't want a line of kind of coming up from behind them. So I kind of offset that line on the frame. Again, just give it a little bit of something aesthetically pleasing about that. So my contributor's dead center, you know, given that they're going to sway a little bit, but my contributor's dead center, but then I've got that line just to occupy the frame. In terms of cameras for the day, I've gone for two cameras, JVC GY LS300 for camera 1, shooting 4K. I know I'm going to be delivering HD, so I've got potentially two edit framings for that when I come to it. I've also stuck up the Sony FS100 as a B cam on an angle, a bit more of a profile-y shot. I know for a fact that with this, there is next to no chance there'll be any useful B-roll or overlay I'll be able to put onto the picture, so it just will be a lot of people talking. So I'm figuring just to have that extra camera angle could just be useful, just to add a bit of variety in with the edit. And of course, a second camera is just a fail-safe. If something goes wrong with the JVC, then at least I've got another camera ready to go that will produce acceptable results for this sort of setup. So audio-wise, the room is a bit echoey. It is what it is, but that did mean that I decided to go with the radio mic. My original plan was just to use the shotgun mic as the principal mic. I'm still running that in as the secondary mic. The advantage of that obviously is it's hands-free. I can position it just pretty much once for all the contributors with a very fine tuning of the angle to make sure it's going straight towards their mouth. But with the room being slightly echoey, I decided, yeah, I do need to stick the lapel mic on, the radio mic, the Sennheiser G3 in there, because that should help a little bit. That'll probably be my first choice for the audio when I get into the edit for this. Of course, I do need to then give that to the contributors. I'm going through a wipe down process, making sure my hands are washed and sterilized, and then wiping down with the cleaning fluid on the unit before handing it over to the next contributor. So it's best endeavours with all these measures. So apart from the room being slightly echoey, there's the hum, I think, of an air conditioning unit or some sort of generator from outside the building, but quite close, which you can hear. Now, with any sort of noise like that, you've got kind of usually two options: either switch that noise off. Typically it's a fridge or something like that, or an air conditioning unit in the room, so you can switch it off, or you find another location. Neither of those is an option for me right now. So what I have done is already record 30, 40 seconds of wild track audio, which I hope when I use that in something like Adobe Audition, I can use to cancel out that particular frequency of background hum and leave a cleaner audio track. This is a bit of wild track audio of a room. Right, it was all going very smoothly, but just as I started with the next contributor I had, probably the third or so of the day, I went to switch on the reefer, and it popped the lamp inside the fixture blue, I guess, which just does happen with those. And of course, I do have a spare, which is currently at home somewhere in the understairs cupboard, because I packed the bag. Completely my fault. I mean, if you've got a spare, you should have it with you. But, what can you do? You can't really panic at that stage. So that's an hour and a half away from where I am now. So the reefer's out of action, and I had to quickly switched out the LED I was using for the reefer, took the reefer down and just used that as a key. It's not as soft a light, I'm getting much more shadow underneath, but it's acceptable. I just had to quickly reframe, and it just goes to show enough lights to quickly do a switch around, switch that for the key. Now I'm going for lunch, but as soon as I've eaten that, I'll come back quickly and see if we can set something up with a reflector, something just to take some of the edge of that shadow. So I absolutely wolfed lunch down just to get back to the room and just see if I could improve the setup for lighting now that the reefer's out of action. And what I ended up doing was bringing a reflector, angling it below them, just lifting, giving a bit of fill from underneath. I've taken the dado from the back wall position where it was acting as the hair light, the sort of rim light, and I've just brought that much closer, and I'm angling that down and bouncing that off the reflector back up towards my subject. Now, the result's pretty good. I'm happy enough with it. It's lifting nicely some of the darkest shadow underneath the face. So I've sacrificed the hair light, the rim light, just so I can use that dado to bounce off the reflector. The reflector's making it a softer light, and it's acting as a fill from underneath. It's just another example. You've just got to adapt, and very quickly when you're out and about on location?